a new battle for hearts and minds in the Middle East, but this time it's being fought by the country's rulers, trying desperately not to become the next Tunisia, the next Egypt, the next Libya. Arab leaders are resorting to incentives and sweeteners to keep their people calm. Is it too little too late? Is money even the answer? Or can the Arab world be bought? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Kamal Santamaria. We're talking reform in the Middle East on today's Inside Story. Forced reform. Because if the uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt and now Libya have taught us anything, and they have, it's that keeping your own people happy is perhaps the best place to start to preempt any further unrest. How do you do that? Well, apparently you throw money at the problem. Subsidies on commodities, pay rises, job creation schemes, plus some ministerial sackings and promises of reform for good measure. Have a look at these examples. Algeria, where the government's repealed the 19-year-old state of emergency. President Abdelaziz Bouteflika also pledging to reduce the cost of staple foods and injecting some $1.4 billion into the public banks. In neighbouring Morocco, it's not so clear-cut, but King Mohammed's promised he will, quote, soon announce, quote, deep reforms. It took the deaths of 5 people in pro-democracy protests, though, for that to happen. Further east in Jordan, King Abdullah sacked his entire cabinet on February 1st. It was a big preemptive move. He also decided to pump around $500 million into the economy to help improve living conditions. And even in the oil-rich Gulf, Kuwait announced it would spend $4 billion to lower the cost of commodities and offered free staple foods to its citizens until the end of March next year. And in Bahrain, after weeks of protests, King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa reshuffled his cabinet under pressure as an exiled opposition leader returned to the country. So there is an understanding that changes have to be made, and it's taken some very serious uprisings for that to happen. But will it work? Can people be effectively bought with promises of the simple everyday things they'd probably expect from their government? Let's put that to our guests. In Riyadh is Mohammed AlQahtani, who is a professor of economics and the head of the Saudi Civil Rights Association. Here in Doha is Sharif El Moussa, a professor of political science at Georgetown University. And also via broadband from Maryland in the United States is Shamu. He is a senior analyst with the Institute for Foreign Policy Studies in Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, thank you all for your time. We appreciate you coming on Inside Story. Let's start with Sharif El Moussa here in Doha. As a professor of political science, what do you think of all this politically? When you see these different countries giving out these incentives, trying to say to their people, we are looking after you, is it perhaps good politics, looking after people or trying to look after your own people in a time of potential crisis?
Well, I mean, I think it probably is a little too late to pacify people with these very simplistic kind of reforms. I don't think they will be able to do this. Probably what people also could read it as is, okay, these governments just even without, we haven't done very much yet, and they are responding this way. I think it gives people a sense of empowerment that they actually could get better deals if they move on. So that is my sense of it. I
guess the argument is also, what more could they do at the moment? Financial incentives are a good place to start, but what more could they do? Yeah,
they are good, but I mean, how long will they start? And where did these governments really get the money from? I mean, it is not very clear where this money comes from. But I think people now, there is the idea in the region that people need to serious radical reforms. In the republics, they mostly want the regimes to go away. In the monarchies, they want constitutional reforms, constitutional monarchies. So I guess that is what is going on now. This is what people seem to want. Now, whether they be able to do this or to get this is another story.
And we'll look at constitutional monarchies a little bit later. Mohammed AlQahtani in Riyadh, let me come to you. Without using this very crass phrase of buying people, is that effectively what these leaders are trying to do? They're trying to buy their way out of trouble?
Well, it reflects the regime nervousness. Something ought to be offered to the people upon the king's return. And apparently there is some disagreement in how to present something palatable to the people. And apparently they agreed upon something, some financial package, which is to me and to a lot of Saudis not enough. The sense that you presented something already on the table is not enough, and financial package, financial gift is not really enough. People are yearning for liberty, more freedom, to take part in decision-making process in their country.
But isn't it, sorry to interrupt you, isn't it, and perhaps not in the case of Saudi Arabia, it's certainly in other countries, isn't it responding to the most acute issue? We like to look in maybe from the West.
Well, not at all.
Go ahead.
You see, not at all. I do not see it as responding to the need of the people. For instance, unemployment has been there for many, many years. The government gave promises after promises. These promises never met and never kept. The thing is, sometimes you need to introduce something as an earnest to the people that shows that you are serious. For instance, to deal with the chronic problem of detaining, political detainees that thrown in prison arbitrarily for many, many years. Some of them, even reach a decade in prison with no trial, no charges. Maybe it's about time to review their cases and set them free as something that could be introduced to the people, that people could look at it as a right step in the right direction. But to throw just financial package that's already there, most of it is there, it became a source of jokes and mockery. And hopefully we expect something to happen in the near future. In the past 2 weeks, there were 3 petitions asking the king to implement a constitutional monarchy. Hopefully we see that not very soon, but maybe in the near future.
Let me bring in Adil Shamu now in Maryland. Put the same sort of question to you. The idea, and Mohammed has refuted this over in Riyadh, but the idea that money and financial issues and financial security is perhaps the most important issue for people. We like to look at the ideas of freedom and democracy and expression and these things as being the big issues, but surely it's about having financial security for a person and their family.
The Arab world is going through an earthquake, through an historical event. The Arabs have been occupied since 12th century by the Mongols and Persian, Ottoman, and then the British, and now even Americans. I think their dignity has been stepped upon. They lack freedom, and most importantly, their government has been corrupt, and they have stolen the wealth of the country for very, very few. So redistributing a small amount of money, like we call it, crumbs to the populace, I don't think is going to work. It may delay here and there. Of course, each individual country differ slightly from each other. But I don't think in the long run it's going to work. It's too little, too late.
So are these rulers in the end who are making these concessions, if you like, are they being naive?
No, they're not being naive. That's what they are used to. It's the old style, throwing money into the populace and hoping that they will mollify them. It may mollify some segment of society, but in the long run, as I said, will not work. Remember, most of these people who are demonstrating, starting, they were the young, and they really yearn for freedom. A lot of them have experienced freedom through their travel and association by other cultures, and they no longer are satisfied by merely accepting a small amount of money to ameliorate their conditions.
Let's see what Sharif El Moussa thinks here in Doha. See if you agree, Sharif, with what the other two panelists
I think
have said.
what we are talking about is you have many problems in the Arab world: political, economic, cultural, educational, health systems. Basically, the Arab state has failed to deliver to people on many levels. And this is what people want. They want a new kind of a new social contract, a new state. They want a state that is capable, that is transparent, that is accountable. It is not a matter of a few $1 million here or there. The state now in the Arab world, most states are captured by security people and by business people or so-called really business people. And I think this has to come to an end. You need to have a modern state. Most of these governments also have failed for the last century, half century since independence, to actually integrate their societies. You have tribal societies, you have ethnic groups, you have all kinds of social divisions, and these governments have failed to integrate them. On the contrary, often they use these divisions to perpetuate their rule. So these are almost really dysfunctional states that we are talking about here.
Mohammed Fahad in Riyadh, do you think this was always going to happen? What Sharif has been saying to us about this sort of reform and this sort of problem that's been throughout the Arab world for so long, was it always going to happen at some point? Because we often look at it as Tunisia being the trigger for all of this happening.
Well, I'll tell you, in terms of level of grievances, is quite huge. I'll tell you about a meeting that has taken place two days ago inside the Ministry of Interior between the family of the detainees who are being held in prison for many, many years under the anti-terror measures that the government has taken for a decade now. What happened in that meeting, the families showed up between 300 and 400, and the argument was heated between them and the Assistant Minister of Interior, and they warned him. They delivered like ultimatum. We have been quiet for many, many years, and we cannot be quiet for long. So if you take the level of the grievances, it's quite huge. And these people are willing to take to the street. And not only that, we have young population who have similar demographic structure, like Tunisia and Egypt, with the level of deprivation of freedom and liberty from the rights for comfortable living. They could take to the street too, because they have nothing to lose. If they are unemployed, at least if they ever in prison, they could get food, and they get whatever. And this could happen unless certain immediate measures are taken, and people basically lost confidence. Before in 2004, several reformists delivered a petition asking for a constitutional monarchy, and all of them were thrown in prison. The government need to deliver, and it need to deliver soon, maybe now rather than tomorrow. This is urgent. We have been hearing all these promises, but nothing substantial being offered on the table. We hope to see something that could soothe the people not to take to the street.
So it seems, gentlemen, you can all agree that money is perhaps not the issue here. There are greater forces at work. I do want to bring in another country, though, one where people broadly say this kind of uprising won't happen. However, it looks like, and this plays into what I was saying before, like Saudi Arabia's rulers might think differently. This week, King Abdullah announced $36 billion worth of extra benefits for his people, just part of a total of $400 billion by the end of 2014. The targeted areas are education, healthcare and the kingdom's infrastructure. Mohammed Fahad in Riyadh, let me come to you, seeing as you are there in Saudi Arabia. That to me looks like financial sweeteners. That to me looks like a leader who thinks he needs to appease his people financially to stop them from rising up.
Well, not at all. I'll tell you, it has been that way. They earmark a lot of money to healthcare, education, social services, but the final output is minimal, and I'll tell you. Because most of government institutions are really dysfunctional in the sense it's riven with corruption, misusing money, and so on and so forth. And during this oil bonanza that we are living in right now, you see several examples of White Elephant projects where the public finance is really funneled toward private accounts, and you don't know where it ends. So the cost of these projects are highly inflated. It doesn't really reflect the real cost. And guess what? Who are involved in these projects? Most of them are really highly ranked individuals in the regime. And accountability is not there. Transparency is not there. People are completely disenfranchised in the system. If you are genuine in combating corruption, then you must bring people on board. You must allow an elected body where it will have check and balances in the government. But the status quo, no matter how many you are announcing, it will have little effect, and it has been the case in Saudi Arabia.
So Adil Shamu, why do you think it is that King Abdullah's done something like this? Do you think maybe he's almost doing it just to be seen to be doing the right thing?
Well, I think it may help here and there, but the question is, would he allow the pillars and institutional infrastructure for free society and democratic society? For example, multi-party system, transparency, like my colleague said, free assembly, free newspapers. Would he do that? And more importantly, will he dismantle the security services which oppress the people and steps down on the integrity of the individual person in Saudi Arabia? Those are the things that the people are yearning to. They are not just yearning for financial gains.
Do you think they're yearning enough, Adil, to rise up like we've seen in other parts of the Arab world?
I think so. I think all the Arabs are really now at a point where their cultural demand from the past to do something better than what they have been living in the past 100 years, and especially now in the past decade with the great freedom of information to them from the outside world and to each other, they are really realizing that just financial gains here and there are not sufficient to live as a human being with full human rights.
Sharif El Moussa, let me bring you back into excuse me, the conversation now. This idea that an uprising could happen in Saudi Arabia when, I think, broadly speaking, people say that would be the country you think it wouldn't happen. But then I guess we said that about Egypt too.
Well, you know, the Arab countries are not all the same. Some of them are, as we know, rich, some of them are poor, some have large populations, some have smaller populations, some have tribal structures, more or less, some don't. So they're not going to be exactly, you know, like clones of each other.
But what about Saudi Arabia? Because it's probably seen as one of the strongest countries in the region and one of the more stable, quieter countries.
Yeah, I think what the Saudi regime has taken into consideration is that here you have their neighbor, Egypt. This is the key Arab country, and their old friend, Mubarak, getting overthrown. And they worry. Now, if Jordan, begins to, people demand to have constitutional monarchy and they achieve it, then Saudi Arabia will worry. So it may be also the regional changes, the regional dynamic will affect how the Saudi population will respond to this and the Saudi opposition. It is not going to be very easy, I imagine, because the regime is repressive and we don't really know of a great deal of organized opposition in Saudi Arabia. But then in Libya, it didn't seem to be that way, and look what happened.
So Sharif has brought up the idea there of constitutional monarchies, and we've heard this a few times in the discussion, so I think we should discuss that now. Mohammed Fahad, I'll come to you in Riyadh. This idea of, and this is being talked about in Jordan as well, the people in Jordan wanting this, of a monarch who is more symbolic and an actual government voted for by the people which works for the people. I don't wish to belittle the people of the region at all, but are they ready for this? When you've had absolute monarchy for so long, are they ready for that sort of change?
Well, I think they are, given the fact that the regime is failing to deliver as far as fundamental services like healthcare and education and infrastructure. For God's sake, in the 2 consecutive years, flooding that has taken place in Jeddah and a lot of people perished, and it happened again this year, with nothing substantial has been taken. People are really, frustrated with the status quo. They are disenfranchised from the system. Constitutional monarchy could be a solution, But you know, of course, it will take maybe a transition of many years to achieve a genuine constitutional monarchy. But the regime need to announce the intention publicly, and they could go in a transition of 5 years. This could happen, but the question is whether the regime is ready to compromise. I don't see them compromising. For instance, I've been approached by a senior prince just the other night. They want to hold a dialogue with some intellectuals, and I was invited to participate in the dialogue, and they gave us condition. It's like a secret meeting, and they refuse in the ground that, look, let's be open. If you want to have a discussion, let's have it public. Let's, as my colleague mentioned, freedom of expression, freedom of media, and so on and so forth. Let people participate in this dialogue. We are not really representative of the people. People could represent themselves. They could speak out. They could demand. They could have an election. These things are fundamental in fixing and powering the regime and how to present and deliver these basic services. If we stay, things will deteriorate. Unfortunately, as far as unemployment, got from bad to worse, and it might be heading to the worst. And these are, a time bomb that could ignite, people to take to the street. You don't know what will happen maybe next month, maybe the month before. You'd rather make compromises when you are in power rather than last-minute compromises which will not work, like what happened in Egypt, Tunisia, and Libya now.
Adil,
things are evolving quite quickly.
Adil Shamu, this idea of constitutional monarchy, it would be a big jump, wouldn't it? Maybe I can get your thoughts on Jordan, because this really seems to be the sticking point on Jordan. Not so much about the finance there, but we want a proper constitutional monarchy.
I think that's a possibility, but I would say it's a small possibility that the people will accept it. Those brave people in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Tunisia who gave their life, and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands others who supported them, I don't think they are ready to accept less than true freedom and democracy. And I think really royalty and constitutional monarchy is archaic. Let's not compare ourselves to England, which has had over 1,000 years continuous monarchy. Our monarchy is really very recent, and it's on fragile infrastructure underneath them. So throwing them is not going to be that traumatic for the Arab world. And loving the freedom and freedom of expression, voting, it's really, as my colleague said, fundamental, but it's natural. It comes natural to every human being in the world.
Sharif El Moussa, that jump from full monarchy to full democracy, do you think it can be done? What Adil was saying there was basically that accepting a sort of stepping stone of constitutional monarchy, the people wouldn't accept that.
Well, I think, first of all, when the regime say the Arab people are not ready, it means they themselves are not ready. The Arab people are ready to govern themselves. In Jordan in 1958, there were probably the freest elections you can ever have. You had political opposition from all kinds of parties, from the Muslim Brothers to the Baathists, to the communists, to the liberals, to everyone. And there were free and fair elections, and people elected their government. But then the King Hussein at the time did not really accept to abide by what people wanted. And then he, disbanded the parliament and got rid of the government, and we went back to, years back. And so you can see people are actually capable and are ready. That was in 1958. This is like 40, 50 years ago, right? Why shouldn't they be capable now? They are very educated. Jordan has a very high literacy rate, lots of university graduates. People are very sophisticated in the country. They can surely govern themselves.
Gentlemen, it has been great talking to you, and I think if the three of you are representative of the Arab world, we can see now that nothing short of full change will be enough. Thanks to our guests, Mohammed AlQahtani in Riyadh, Sharif El Moussa in Doha, and Adil Shamu in Maryland. And thank you for once again joining us for Inside Story. If you want to comment on this show or send us an idea for a future edition. It's easily done. Hop on the email and drop us a line. InsideStory@aljazeera.net. I'm Kamal Santamaria from the whole team. Goodbye for now.